We're ending the day with something really exciting, tax. I can see the room emptying as I speak. So a very, very topical area, tax and remote working, and that's what we're going to cover off today. We'll start with some introductions. I'll start first. I'm Dinesh Jangra, so I'm a partner within Crowe. So we're 40,000 people, 146 countries, tax advisory risk business around the world. My job is really to help companies with global mobility issues, and this is an issue that's kept us really, really busy around the world. So that's me. Hand on to Janet.
Hello, I'm Janet O'Hare. I work at Aggreko. I'm Global Mobility Manager, primarily focusing on the power solutions part of the business, which is very much very fast movement of rotators.
Hello, I'm Khadeeja Islam. I head up the Global Mobility team at Aggreko. We are a power solutions company. Generally, we rent out our power equipment, and we are in around 92 countries around the world.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Gillian Costain from Langerook. We are an international engineering and construction company with presence in the UK, the Middle East, and Australia. I predominantly look after employment tax for the business, but have been involved in specialist payroll, reward benefits, global mobility, and tax topic of the day.
Yeah. And so just a little bit of context before we kind of get going into the discussion. So it's kind of continuing the theme of this conference, right? So talent is in really short supply everywhere, and that talent pool is global. It's kind of been some of the themes of previous sessions. What we've seen in the employee base and talent base is the last 2 years have accelerated what was already happening, which was I want work to fit into my life and not the other way around. So we've seen this kind of change in power, if that's the right word, in terms of relationships between talent and those that want to engage talent. So we're seeing more and more organizations are being asked the question, I want to work for you, but these are my terms. And often those terms are living in a country that is not the same as where the role is, and that's what we're going to explore. So there's tax issues, I'm sure some of you will be aware, but generally speaking, there's actually a lot of issues when you've got an individual who's working in another country but employed in a different country. So we start in the center of that circle, HR, right? So how do you deliver comp and bends to this person? How do you engage them? How do you know what their holiday entitlement is if they're in a different country to base? Labor and employment. So if a person lives in another country, are you and they subject to labor law in that country? So that's something that we need to think about there. Payroll. If you're employing somebody who lives in another country, as an employer, you might have payroll, social security, registration, and operational requirements. Immigration, we can't assume because somebody wants to work in a country, they actually can legally. So it's something that needs to be checked. And then the really fun stuff around tax. So where are they paying their taxes? What is that doing to their net compensation versus what they expect to be getting? Are they themselves or a collection of these types of people in a country causing a permanent establishment, which is a corporate tax presence in that country? That may not be something that's desirable. And then we're seeing a lot of models where a country takes over the employment of that person and recharges back to where the role is. Effectively, we call it transfer pricing in tax, so that needs to be thought through. But we've looked at this issue. I mean, there's 50 plus things that need to be thought through. And I haven't even mentioned expense policies, insurances, duty of care, a whole bunch of stuff that needs to be thought through. So before we get into discussion, I just want to share some early findings from a piece of thought leadership we're working on right now. So already we've interviewed organizations representing headcount of 677,000 there. And we're talking to them about this issue. And the findings we're coming across so far, we're sort of halfway through the research project, are this issue is almost exclusively employee-driven, almost exclusively. Also, despite the news and everything, there's not people sitting on islands, on beaches trying to maximize their personal tax bill. It's more family, and point of origination that's happening. Two types of kind of cases are emerging. There's this work from anywhere. So I want to go on holiday to Spain, and on each side of that holiday, I want to work from Spain, work from anywhere. So what are the boundaries around that? And then increasingly, there's what I call cross-border working by design. So this is where you're engaging with an individual and they're having that conversation saying, my terms are, I live in Spain, I'll do a London role, I'll come 6 days a month to the office, and if you want me, you need to make this work. That's kind of what we're seeing. Work from anywhere, so this concept of annual sort of limits, we're seeing anything between 15 and 30 days a year. It depends on industry, so if you're highly regulated banking, FS, it's more like the 15, other companies are doing 30. One large consumer organization is saying 60. We're not even going to look at it until it's gone to 60 or more. We're seeing a model of hosted employment, I mentioned. So in that example, really the key global talent person sits in Spain. It's a UK job. They want to live in Spain. And you go, okay. So you ask your Spanish business to host that employment. So they'll take the person, hire them. You might use a different solution like an EOR or something as well. So that's happening, and then you need to cross-charge the costs as well. One thing I think it's still hazy in the market is pay, right? So if you've got somebody who's working in Spain, do you pay them the Spanish market salary, or do you carry on paying the UK? And because a lot of these cases are in transition, a clear trend I don't think has emerged. A lot of organizations are looking at 6 months as being like the tipping point, because the tax rules change at 6 months. So saying after 6 months you need to go local comp, local salary. With key talent, that doesn't really work. So that was just sharing some examples that we've seen in the market. And I guess I just want to bring in the panel here now into this as well. So just another little label. So what I'm calling this issue is reverse business travel, right? So business travel used to be about base, going out to do business, but this is kind of the other way around. It's people in field or markets living there coming back to base, right? That's kind of what we're starting to see. So I guess if we go back one to the panel, are these issues you recognize are showing up in your organization? Khadeeja, you're nodding.
No, absolutely. These are definitely coming up for all of us at Aggreko anyway. I think our focus primarily has previously been tax, and whether it's income or corporate. And the area that we definitely overlooked before was the labour and employment.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us have, definitely from a mobility perspective, we just assume that when you go to another country, if you're assigned there, you're potentially able to keep your home country entitlements and packages exactly the same for a short period of time. But when this remote working comes into play, it doesn't necessarily work, and that's the real challenge that Dino, we are facing at the moment, and trying to make it work in some of these countries where the labour laws are much stricter than the UK, or whichever country that people are working from, is something that our business and our HR doesn't really understand.
Yep.
And I think they believe that we're being difficult because it's not something that they've come across before, because they've only ever heard immigration tax. And with most of these remote working requests that we tend to see, where people are going back to their country of origin, immigration may not necessarily be the issue. So people think, yes, move people, any tax, we'll make it work. But that is what's really stinging us right now, because we as mobility don't necessarily have that knowledge either. And so it's something that we as a team are really looking to, partner with our providers and get that information from them, because we just don't know. We don't have a clue on the labour, and our HR team are not familiar with international, employees coming and acquiring labour rights over there. So that's the real challenge that we're seeing. It's the rest of it which most companies, I think, understand now over the last 10, 12 years. But that one is the one that's really something that people don't really have a clue about.
Yeah, Yeah, and I guess it's worth reminding everyone, so those are technical issues that have to be considered at a country level for an individual. So you're getting into a level of complexity which is quite scary at times. And Gillian, how is this showing up for you?
Multidisciplinary challenge is a great title for the slide because that's exactly what it is. And I think a lot of people have been talking about being on a journey as a post-COVID pandemic situation. And we are still on a journey. We're all still trying to find ways of working. What's the best way of working? What's the best processes, policies for our people? I mean, for us in construction, it's quite easy in a way because we build buildings, we build infrastructure, so we need the workers on site. So it's very difficult for those people to be working from home because, you're pouring concrete. Yeah, we're all over our carbon cap, Mike. We've got a plan for that. We're pouring concrete, we're building rebar. You can't do that from home. Yep. So, a lot of the challenges that we have are limited, but then we still have some exceptional cases where we do need to look at them, and it's having to explain to the business that it's not all about the tax and the immigration. There are other implications where you've got automatic entitlement to employment rights in a country. There's data protection law, which is different. Insurances, from policies, from health cover, from everything you need to think of that would automatically be covered for your employee if they were still in the UK, but as soon as they step out the UK and work elsewhere, it's a minefield. It can be a minefield.
Yeah, absolutely. And Janet, the labour law thing also, is it a surprise for you as well?
I would say a little bit less, primarily because I've got a degree in it.
That helps.
In European labour law, but
that really helps.
It helps, but to the level of what we just experienced with Spain, I didn't think it would go that far. But I'm quite flexible. Yeah. If it's got to be done, it's got to be done. It's more the difficulty, I would say. That's just getting the business to actually understand that this is a consequence of implementing this for that specific person.
Yeah, you're not just saying no for a reason.
Exactly. If you want to do it, well, this is the consequence. What is more tricky, I would say, is when you are not sending somebody, but somebody wants to work in a different country where potentially you don't have an entity and you've got to have another setup or register an entity, and then or the country allows it. So we've had exceptions, especially during COVID, where certain islands have allowed people to go and work remotely from there. But then if they go and have an accident, what happens? Who's covering them? What insurance is there? And I think it's them type of risks that haven't necessarily been fully taken on by the business, and at times we do spend a lot of time reminding them of basic security rules, and they see us as kind of a barrier, but no, we're just kind of pre-warning you. Do what you want, but we're pre-warning. And it's the last thing you want is for an accident to happen because the guy is, I don't know, somewhere in Hawaii, and he's gone surfing and he's had an accident and he's in a coma or something. What do you do?
It's the duty of care and also protecting the business from
the reputation.
Financial impact and severe cases. Jail term for directors. It can be that severe.
Yeah, and what we're seeing is, of course, because for quite a large part of the last 2 years, it didn't really matter where you worked because it was Zoom, Teams, whatever else we use. It didn't really matter, right, that where you were, because the work got done. So there's evidence to say, as talent approaches senior management and say, well, I've just done this for 2 years. Why do you care where I'm in Spain or Dubai, or why do you care? I've done my job. And that's quite a logical conversation, right? I've done my job, I'm a top performer, but those discussions are happening without any real knowledge of this stuff here, which is the stuff that authorities around the world were more forgiving of in the pandemic, but the pandemic, those easements have gone, so these things are now real, and I think everyone's tripping over those, aren't they? Okay. So just moving on a little bit. So have you noticed more of this happening now versus 2019? That's an open question.
I mean, it's definitely something that we're more aware of. It probably did happen pre-2019, but the business is coming to us more. However, our stance has now changed as an organisation. So we've now been told that because of the work that it creates for global mobility, because we have unfortunately become the owners of this, they want every request to go directly to the board, and if the board agrees to consider it, then it will filter down.
Wow.
So that's a move in a positive direction for us, certainly.
Yeah, I mean,
similar
for us,
process for you?
Yeah, it's a case by case basis, but you know, very minimal questions that come through as a result of it. I mean, because we are UK, Middle East and Australia, and we have hubs in each of those countries, then if we have secondees or we're moving people around the hubs, our projects are in those countries as well, so they're going to be working on the projects in those countries. So we'll move them onto local payroll and we'll move them onto local packages. So they are covered by everything that's dealt with in country as opposed to dealing with it from the UK. So we limit a lot of exposure by doing that, and then, like I say, if there are any other exceptional cases, then they are dealt with ad hoc. Yep. But it would be a line manager request, perhaps raised to HR or through our global mobility team, and then it would be signed off by the board. But again, they're few and far between that we personally see.
Tell me a little bit more about, it was probably already happening, but you're seeing it more? What's the change, do you think, around the visibility of the issue?
We have released, I think back in 2020, we released a remote working policy. And in there we put a line that if there was any kind of international remote working request, that they needed to raise it with HR. And then what we did from a mobility perspective, we mapped out a whole remote worker process. Not everyone is still coming to us, of course, but because of us putting our reference mark in that policy, people have been coming to us, and because these sorts of arrangements, although they're supposed to be kind of nil to the company when they start the discussions, they always end up costing a lot of money. And my team, Janet especially, has had to do a lot of work to make the directors aware of the cost of such arrangements, and now they're kind of realizing that actually it's not something that is at zero cost. So that's why, and because people are trying to save money and all of that sort of stuff, they now are coming to us because they want to make sure that they've considered everything, because if they don't and somebody does go and create costs, they'll get their wrists slapped. So
and it's a little bit kind of opposite to general market. So work from home, agile working, reduce your property portfolio, decrease your costs. It's a win-win, employees winning, you're winning. In this environment, you're likely creating more compliance. So actually, it's probably going to cost you more, possibly. So it's not quite the straightforward win-win, is it?
Yeah.
You get from, working from home domestically.
Unless it becomes a local to local move.
Yeah.
But a lot of these requests are in 2 countries that we just don't have a presence in already, and that's where it becomes a lot more work, and we need to look at these alternative models at times, and then it's difficult to get the buy-in from the employee, even though they're the ones who are creating the situation, and it goes on for months as well as at times. So,
and I should say, tax authorities and the people that regulate this stuff, it's not like they've completely nailed their position on how this all works around the world. They're not clear at times as to how this is supposed to work. So everyone's kind of finding their feet, regulators, employees, employers as well. So Gillian, just like you look at those issues, what's the one that flashes red most in your organisation?
Ooh, I think it's going to be the taxation, so the permanent establishment risk from a corporate tax perspective. and it's so easy to hit that. But again, it's about the duty of care for the people.
Yep.
And just making sure that they are safe, and also what they're doing is safe for the business. They're not creating any other risks, whether that be from a financial perspective or insurance. You know, we've got to take care of it. But we did have a presence in Canada at one point, and I'm going to mention Trowbridge here, which is why I'm here today. But unfortunately, Arun Nagruda, or Ernie, as he likes to be known, has supported us for the last 12 years, so we're still transitioning out of our time in Canada. And that taught us quite a big lesson. So going into a country, not just a country, but various provinces with not just UK to provincial laws, but provincial to provincial laws, which were mind-blowing. So, you know, without the support of external people, we just wouldn't have been able to manage it, because we had short-term assignments, long-term assignments, in-country expatriate assignments, you know, and then with all the statutory payments and complexities that come with that as well. And yes, you know, we had to create a permanent establishment because we were very much there at the time. So that has all gone now, because we're no longer in Canada. But being construction, you just don't know where the next project is or where you might end up. So it's as much as it's quite easy to manage at the minute, you just never know what's around the corner. So it's always good to make sure that you've got a grasp on all of the, you know, the areas of concern that you need to think of. It's not just about tax.
In that example, was that one where you didn't intend or think you would create a permanent establishment, but you did? Is that what happened?
No, we were aware that we would, because of the work that we were doing in Canada and the amount of time we were going to be spending in Canada. So we had to set up the entity to deal with that. But you know, it's something that we needed support with. It was huge. Yeah.
Again, what's the big flashing red from an Aggreko perspective?
PE and payroll and social security, I think.
Yeah.
More than the actual personal tax side, it's more the payroll and social security aspects.
Yeah, keeping
especially
as
within
employers
Europe
compliant.
now, with people coming from Britain,
because
they still don't understand that Brexit has an effect on them.
And I think this awareness around the employment laws and the implications, I think some of this is cultural, because in the UK we have a pretty light touch labour system in comparison to our European neighbours. So I think culturally we're not in tune with a person lives in another country, therefore they acquire rights in that country under labour law, regardless of which employment agreement was used. So I think there's a cultural piece to that. I think I doubt, like, the Belgians would probably think the same of somebody working in Germany. So we'll see how that goes. And then if you had a magic wand, again, question to all of you, and this is complex, and you had a magic wand that you could wave and it would fix all of this, what would that look like to you? Like, you know, Gillian?
Reverse Brexit, basically. Yeah. It's had a massive impact on our workforce. Our labour shortage is tenfold as a result. And being a tier 1 contractor, we're all competing for the same labour in the same space that just isn't there. And a lot of that is as a result of Brexit. We just don't have the people anymore. Yeah,
and I guess because of the nature of your business, site-based, real things that need to be watched or moved, you can't do remote, right? You can't have somebody in Belgium doing that type of work because they have to be here.
No, it's a long pipe to run from Belgium to the UK to pour concrete.
So that
it's not possible.
Khadeeja, for you?
So I think for me, it would just be consistency of legislation across the globe. So each country just has the same rules, because it would definitely make all of our lives much easier, because we just, you know, it would be the same rules and we know what to expect. We can have the same policies for everywhere. We wouldn't necessarily be discriminating against certain you know, nationalities and all that sort of stuff. Everybody would just have the same conditions. I think it would definitely make our lives sick, and I know it's never going to happen. So, but it would definitely
be far less interesting.
We did say magic wand.
How would it work for you? What would the magic wand be to this issue?
I don't think there is a one. Sorry, I'm too blunt. What would the magic one be? Certainly more clarity, because all these things, yes, it's a risk, but none of them talk to each other.
No.
True. Yeah. Different authorities, different.
Yeah.
Yep.
We are, although there's this whole new digital world, they still don't speak to each other. I don't know why. It would make sense to me if I was a country deciding this and I want to get the most out of these roles. Because I think all of us in our day-to-day job, we have to take risks around it and break certain of the roles, kind of trying to measure that risk.
Yep.
But I think the reality is that there's a huge COVID bill for the world, and that's likely to be somewhere in there they're going to get money out of companies.
Yeah, yeah.
So if we had the alignment and we were all joined in processes and how we take the approach on risk and taxation and social security, then we could actually share the money between the countries, and there would be an agreement. And you know, if you're in Spain, Spain's due the money. If you're in the UK's due the money. It would be easier.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's there is no magic wand. It's
And I'm aware within the EU institutions there's a consultation process happening. I'm not sure it's widely known, but they're consulting with large employers to say, if there was a right to work from anywhere in the EU, what do large employers think? And largely we like the idea, it's just an administrative headache. So it's like what you said, how do you remove all this headache and kind of make it simpler to work on? Okay. Just conscious of time, I want to leave some few moments for questions. Does anyone have any questions in this space? There's one at the back there.
Hi there. This might be a little bit off-piste, maybe I missed it. If you haven't got a permanent establishment in another country, have you considered using third-party agents? So you change the relationship with the employee, put them through a third-party agent and still use their services so they get the flexibility. You don't get the same headaches. And if you discounted that, why did you discount it?
I think that's a question for you guys, probably.
Yeah.
So third-party employers?
So we have considered on a case-by-case basis, depending upon the role or the provider that we were looking to work with for that at the time. And it seemed, unfortunately, we were in a rush because the individual had already, decided to remotely work from that particular location, and we were short of time. So we weren't able to necessarily move to the employer of record model that we had considered. So we actually have a GEC set up, so we use that as an alternative, although it did cost more overall to the company than what the employee of record model would have cost, because we had we were short on time. That was the approach that we took, but we are considering the employer of record model where we have a few people and we just have to make it work, because we can't use the GEC model or something like that. So we are considering those sort of alternatives, or recruitment agencies kind of thing, acting as a third party employer. So we do consider all types of, but the challenge that we have is our employees who do request this kind of cross-border working arrangement tend to be the very senior people, and they don't necessarily want to lose the continuation of their employment or their benefits that are associated with the long-term incentives, etc. They also think that if they move to this arrangement, they might be in the pipeline to be made redundant sooner than other people, because they're no longer, officially employed by us. So it hasn't necessarily filtered through, but we are considering it for some people where we just don't have any other option.
Yeah. And Aggreko is a global employment company or organization that sits within the group, which you use to house these kinds of strange cases, I guess. I think we have time for one more question, if there is one out there. Oh yeah, hi.
Oh, sorry.
I'm a brand new entrepreneur, and I've been hearing a lot today about the importance of your employees and making them the focus. Obviously, I kind of grasped that before. But listening to this and looking at the implications of expectation setting around new employees, or in fact in a new company, how can I ensure that the environment of my new company, that my employees know all of these complexities, so that when they come and ask me for this, and I say, great, let's do it, there's all of these things that are going to happen to you, that I'm not being blamed for the fact that there's all of these. So well, I'm asking you, if you were setting up a brand new company, what would you say to your employees around this kind of issue?
I mean, it depends really on the purpose of you hiring that person. So if it's to, if they're a key talent, then you would be willing to kind of meet all of these requirements, and then you would explain to them that this has to happen, and these people will support you with making this happen. If they are not necessarily a key talent, then you would say our policy is that you just work from the country that you're employed in. So that's, I think,
And you manage your own
and then
tax affairs.
you manage your own, or you're not allowed to go more than 10 miles radius of the office, that sort of thing. Yeah. So what we are seeing generally in organisations, certainly in the ones that we work with or we network with, are that there tends to be a key driver, which is the talent retention, which all of these areas we would consider and do the work for, because we don't want to lose that talent. But where we don't really mind, we say, oh, sorry, our policy is, we just don't consider any of this. And then we say, so it's kind of like how, I mean, the question would be back to you, is how key is that talent for you?
And do you want the add-on cost of the individual plus the cost of managing all of these risks for that individual?
Yeah. Okay. I think we've run out of time. So hopefully that was useful. We're still around.
It went really quick.
If anybody has any questions, feel free. Thank you for bearing with tax as the last item today. So thank you very much.
Thank you.